that they don't want to know.
Which desert? That's the question.
That part I'm not revealing.
I see. Okay. Well, as long as it's not one of our deserts.
I will tell you it's not even on Earth.
So you don't have any water in the whole country.
Yeah, so there's water right just down here.
No.
We don't have it in the rooms.
What's customary is like the thing of water and paper plastic cups or something like that.
Yeah, well, they just have it in a central location.
Well, I'm sure because it's a union hotel. It's probably some ungodly price. Not too big on unions, but good for some stuff. I've known people where they just ridiculous things. Like I knew this woman who worked at a university in the kitchen. Technically, she's not supposed to help. If they need help, she's supposed to call in somebody else to come and work. Which is impractical because you need help right now. You can't wait for somebody to come in. Or, so she would help out on a lot, but she's not supposed to. It's like, those are so, I understand why that's there. Because they should be on the job if there's work to be done. But it's like, I would kill for my boss to help me. Yeah. It's like, hello, we're busy. Get off your butt and not here and serve burgers with the rest of us.
Well, in the world.
But, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, I have a technical question of all of you. You are in the hotel, correct?
Yeah.
Each of you in the hotel room? When you went to, presumably, well, there's a table in that hotel room. Okay? Is there on top of that table a what we would think of as a wired Ethernet?
Yes.
Okay. Did you try that? Okay.
No, I figured it'd cost money.
Okay, so you didn't drive. Either of you guys tried?
No.
I figured there'd be another charge. And they got a bottle of Aquafina for $5.
See, here's the change from and this is not a criticism, but this is sort of the change. I would think that at least 4 out of the 5 of us, I did, of course, because that's the kind of painful person I am. I not only tried it, I of course crawled under the table to see what the problem was. The problem, it turns out, and we had to call the front desk to find out this, because I said, you have a problem here, your DSL modem isn't working, you don't seem to have any DSL coming in. They said, that's true, you only have wired internet on the 14th floor.
Why would they put that?
Better still, why would they have that sitting there powered up and turned on?
Yeah, they don't have any outlets anywhere. Like for charging like
so many of the top outlets are broken.
Are like on the right side of the table.
No, mine didn't. I was behind the television.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, or the outlets are broken. Even in some of these rooms, it's like the top outlet is constantly broken.
Yeah, in the music room, all the outlets on the far wall were not working. They were not valid. That's useful.
Good grief.
Yeah, that's why we have run 50.
Well, if they're reviewing this video, you've got problems, hotel. Please fix them.
Yeah, I just want to be able to charge.
I mean, I wouldn't want to come back here.
We can't put it there.
I don't have a charger.
What? You carry the charge for reproduction?
I lost the cell phone charger here too, and I'm kind of peeved about that. For my cell phone.
Oh, just
there are no
HTC Sensation.
What kind of connection does it use?
Well, it's got like the little thing that plugs into the wall, and it's essentially got a micro USB cable.
Yeah.
But still, that still costs me money. I kind of need that. I mean, I had an extra one in my car that's usually stay plugged in, but it's not as reliable. So who's running this thing?
I believe running is too strong.
Who's in charge?
Who's responsible for this?
We don't really have anyone in the audience.
I believe once again we have a problem of word choice there.
Well, you see, we just came from like an artist meetup, which apparently is headed by nobody.
Yeah. I believe you. Now, the interesting thing is,
I don't know who's scheduling these things.
With one person in the audience, well, keep in mind that we have tough competition for this particular thing.
yeah. So I think everybody's probably in the other
I believe
conventions.
That in fact, even though it says that all of us are here, we have Festworks, Sarah Meltzer. Ron,
And there's the belly dance. You guys are competing with a belly dance.
Belly dancing. We have Beat Prom. We're up against.
We're up against
we're up
Why did I
against
have
the.
Who's Eric Raymond?
Who is Eric Raymond? No, Eric Raymond is one of the earliest instances of that.
Why is that in my bag? Did I accidentally leave mine there? I'm not Eric Raymond.
No, I know where he is actually.
I'm missing mine.
I'll get to him and make fun of him. What else is Eric? Oh, he has his, of course, there's no schedule. Well, this
So
is.
I think it's past the time, so we should get started because I know about it. Hi, we're apparently nifty guests, and you're supposed to meet us. That's as much as we know, and that's more than we've been told.
See, I thought there was going to be like food and drink and things like that for people to just sort of wander around and have painfully strained cocktail party conversations and that sort of thing.
We can do that without. It won't be as
We need the
enjoyable
cocktail
without
stuff.
food.
I was going to say, if you want to have really painfully strained cocktail party conversation, if you like. So, how about them fill in the blank of the name of this
So
person?
who the hell are you, and why are you nifty?
I'm Frank Hayes. I'm a nifty because I was a music and tech guest of honor for Penguicon 5, 4, 6, somewhere 5 plus or minus 1. The reason I was a music guest is because I've written and performed a bunch of songs, including songs that used to wake up the Space Shuttle astronauts in space twice. The reason I was a tech guest of honor was because I was at the time a columnist for Computer World and had written a bunch of songs about that as well. And you, well, Eric Raymond, I can tell you, this is
me. Well, no, let's not skip Megan.
No, we're not there yet because we still have Eric's here.
Yeah.
Eric Raymond is just a bastard.
He's passed out drunk under the table.
That's correct.
why.
Yeah.
That's correct. He was here. He slid down, and Eric is.
Come on in, you nifties.
Eric is that guy. Yes. Tell us who you are.
I am Megan Gedris, and I draw comics.
But what comics do you
I
draw?
draw Looney Dream. I was kidnapped by lesbian pirates from outer space. I draw Meaty Yogurt. I draw a bunch of other ones too. And
Where can we find him on the web?
at rosalarian.com.
Spell please.
ROSALARIAN.
So that lesbians from space thing, the previous con, you had one of those up on the wall inside an elevator, and there were like young kids. There was like, I don't know, an 8-year-old girl or something that came in, and she, as the elevator was moving up, she looked at that and said, "Oh, okay," and that was.
Next.
I'm Festworks. I'm nifty because I'm a very outspoken in the amateur web cartoonist community, I suppose. I've done a bunch of podcasts on webcomics. In 2007, I started something called the Webcomic Beacon. It's all about, it was like a topical discussion sort of podcast, and I would get guests on. Lately, I can't think of any topics to try to pair with the guests, so we just had guests on for interviews that have done stuff in the webcomics world and whatnot. And I also make my own webcomics. I also run an archive site of an open source comics character named Jenny Everywhere.
And that's the Jenny Everywhere person.
Yeah, I didn't create her. I'm just a big enough nerd that I have the most comprehensive archive about her. And what else can I do?
If there were someone who could be considered the premier webcomic scholar, I feel like it would be you. Like if webcomics had like a library, you would be like the head of it.
It's called the internet.
The keeper of the webcomic knowledge, I feel.
No, I don't keep it. I see that's the one thing that's different between me and like the higher ups' version of helping other web cartoonists. We don't have a paywall. Then again, we don't have like people writing big articles for us and whatever. But I'm really all about, hey, you want to make a webcomic? Cool, let's do it. I know it sucks, but just do it anyway.
I think that's a lot more helpful than, hey, pay me a bunch of money and I'll tell you a bunch of things that you've already heard before.
To be fair, they do get some stuff over there, but I feel that shouldn't be behind a paywall. That should be linked somewhere, and it should be shared. You know,
And
that's
where,
me.
and where is it that people would link to? What URL would they link to get to you?
Well, I got a business card here. You can go to festworks.com and just see there's a bunch of links at the top of most some of the stuff that I do. Otherwise, webcastspeaking.com will take you to the podcasts, and that's otherwise I'd be here listening to Tim roar around. So let's move on.
I'm Sean McDonald. I'm with Wax Chaotic.
Why are you Nify?
Because they said we are.
Because they're wax chaotic.
Because we're wax chaotic.
What's Wax Chaotic?
We are a folk group
Oh.
from Indianapolis.
The three of us are Wax Chaotic.
Well, then let's get rest of the names then before.
I'm Allie Clarkson. And I'm Kat Thomas.
And then what's wax stuff?
Musicians.
Musicians.
So basically, this is what happens to musicians on Saturday night. They show up at the Nify's party. There's four of us are.
So what do you play?
Wax instruments? No, regular instruments.
It's just a name.
I don't know.
We're wax chaotic because we talk a lot about a lot of different things and we never shut the hell up. That's what it is. It's wax everywhere. Yeah.
Family! So do you already have a performance here, or do you
Yeah,
already going to?
it was at 3 this afternoon.
I was about to get one of these guys.
But you can find us online at waxchaotic.com.
Do you have business cards?
No.
I have business cards.
I have business cards for me, but they're up in the room because I'm awesome.
I do have a performance tomorrow at noon. So who's going to be awake at noon tomorrow? Yeah. Thank you.
I'm conscious. I'm not sure about
Awake.
awake.
That's the joke.
I'm not technically awake right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So are there any questions from our audience?
What sorts of things would you like to know or not like to know about?
Yeah, since it's all
Okay.
about meeting us.
So,
Who doesn't want to meet us?
presuming that you have some drawing knowledge and capabilities and some interest in 1,000 other little hurdles and stuff, I assume that you have a lot of flexibility over the size and all that for your web comics. How many hours would you say it would take you to come up with a web comic that you would think would be worthwhile of what you're typically doing?
Like an individual page or the entire, like a concept for
Are you talking about a concept for a series or something that we're already doing?
Okay, so I'm looking for some concept of how much effort you guys put into this type of work, right? So if you're doing 20 hours a week and you're coming up with one page to come up with that 20 hours, or if you're spending 300 hours a week and it's like
You should answer this since you have more of a
Yeah.
you got
With all of my series, I plan them out for at least 3 years before actually starting, putting them online and getting people to read them. And once they go online, I currently work around 14 to 16-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week. I typically do anywhere from 9 to 16 pages a week right now. But I'm working on 4 different series at once. So I definitely have to do a lot and all by myself. But
you also don't have a day job right now.
right now I don't have. This is
So
my
you're
day
able
job.
to do that.
Yeah, so she's able to choose which 16 hours per day.
Yes,
She prefers.
exactly. Those 16 hours.
You can work any 16 hours a day.
Those 16 hours do not include mornings.
Or lunch, or errands, or anything else.
Breakfast is at 2 p.m.
That's a lot more structured than I am. That 3 years of planning. No, as far as at my peak, when I was updating my regular comic 3 days a week, it's more or less, it found it a lot easier if you actually had a script ahead of time, and then you can fine tweak that script as you update it, which would sometimes be last minute. I had total reversals of a script because my muse told me, no, you gotta do this. This is much better. Scrap that part of the script, start again. Per comic that I was working on at the time, it would take me maybe 6 to 8 hours on average. Right now, I'm mostly just doing the comic as I can, and I'm working. I I will be starting up again Arjo, where I got to look at a script that was pre-written and it really needs a lot of help. I found out, and so that's going to take several hours of my time to try to re-script it and then get it to the artist, and then I have to color it, and then coloring it will take me. Basically, it's like a second job. It can vary depending on how well skilled you are. Sometimes people can crank out fantastic stuff in shameful amounts of time for like the rest of us that are spending twice as long on just the pencil part. You know, it can vary so much, especially because there's so many variety in the amount of art. There's no real blanket answer of how long it can take, because sometimes people just take a little bit longer to do this. It's consuming. It's a hobby you really have to work at. If that even remotely answers your question.
No, it doesn't.
I had to find hobbies besides comics because it used to be my hobby,
When
and
it becomes work, it's
I wondered why I was
Right.
stressed all the time, and I
became
realized
work.
it's because I did absolutely nothing every single day but work. So I took up gardening. I don't think there is any possible way I could ever accidentally turn gardening into a career. So I'm terrible at it. I think in my entire gardening career, I have grown 1 strawberry and 2 tomatoes.
I was going to say that
I
that's more than some of us. I did have a good pepper plant once. It only bloomed in the winter.
Wow, that's
It was sort of a screw you pepper plant. We planted it in the spring. This is in Portland, Oregon, so it doesn't snow that much.
It's not Michigan.
No, it's not Michigan. I grew up in the Midwest, but we planted it, and so we planted it in the front, and it was going to be nice, and we were going to have these nice. In fact, they were not jalapenos. What's that next step up from those?
Habanero?
Habanero, yes. It was a habanero pepper plant that somebody gave us. Okay, we planted it, and it grew, and it didn't do anything. And we sort of gave up on it. It snowed. It snows maybe 2 weeks a year in Portland. It snowed, and we came out, and it was blooming. Hadn't bloomed all year.
There aren't even any bees to pollinate that.
No, I don't know whether or not. I don't think we got any peppers off of it. But
We got a flower.
We got a flower. And the next year we sold the house and said, good luck.
So is Portland, Oregon, like Portlandia?
Yes, it's Portland, Oregon, but not like Portlandia.
Oh.
It's actually it's a lot like Chicago, quite frankly, except it's a lot smaller. Now I have a question about percentages, because people have strange ideas about how much the proportion is of planning to actually. People think, oh, okay, well, for drawing the webcomic or drawing the comic, whether it's web or not, there's there's the drawing part, and you draw a bunch of lines. Now, the more you know about it, you know that back in the day it was pencils, and now you use computers and things like that. But how much of it, writing or drawing, what percentage of that ballpark figure is the actual sitting down and doing the finished script, doing the drawing?
The mechanics versus the creative part?
The mechanics versus the planning part.
Well, I mean, once those 3 years are passed, and it takes me 3 years. It's not like 3 years straight of nothing but
Yes,
planning.
yes.
It's, when I'm not working on my current series, I'm thinking of concepts for future projects,
Yeah.
and usually it's 3 years because that's how long it takes me to finish one of my others, so I have time to work on something else. But also just like I'll come up with like 10 different ideas in those 3 years and whittle it down to the one that I actually want to keep. But having all that time to do so much planning means that by the time I'm actually doing stuff, I can crank it out pretty fast, actually. Like 95% of those 16-hour days is just pure working on stuff. I write everything ahead of time, so when I actually get around to drawing things, it's all done. I just lay it out.
You know exactly where things have to drop in terms of the.
It's like breathing at this point, so, I could do it in my sleep, and sometimes I think I do, because there's not enough time to sleep in those schedules.
it varies greatly between the type of webcomic. Yours are story based. If you're doing like a gag a day, it's not necessarily easier. Or
I think those are
Because you do
harder.
have to have
even
that
single
gag.
panel ones, Book of Biff, it's hard to come up with something daily that's a 1-2 punch in a single panel.
I actually have a much harder time with gag-a-day stuff. Like Meaty Yogurt would go back and forth between gag-a-day and more storyline-based things, and the hardest ones were always the like single-page gag.
Yeah, I don't really
They-
have good experience
They're
with that.
super hard for me.
You're right here.
Hello.
You're right here. Not only,
Wow.
not only are you right here. We in fact even
Yeah,
had
really
your
don't know what the name tag.
Eight?
your name tag.
How many panelists and 3 people in the audience?
Well, you improved our percentage.
It's a party.
It
I
was,
see.
Yeah.
it was only a 2 1/3 to 1 before, but now we've improved our number much higher.
3 to 1
Now
odds.
I think we can take them.
That's right. 3 to 1 odds is the classic military precondition for attacking.
Yeah, I think we're good.
You're doomed.
We
2 arms.
we're talking about comic creation, and he was asking what the percentage was of all the before you actually sit down and work on it versus finding technical versus creative. Yeah, it varies quite a lot.
So you can actually introduce yourself for real.
Yeah, when I first started my comic, I was
first
composing
went
what I
around
was doing right when I was making it.
We introduced you as, a terrible person who's passed out drunk under the table. So here's your chance to clear your name.
Oh, me? I don't drink.
Which is why that joke worked.
Yes. So I'm Eric Raymond. I blow up industries for fun. I blew up the software industry 15 years ago by helping found the modern open source movement, and I've been wandering around randomly making trouble ever since. Fair intro?
Tell us, well, since we've been talking about ourselves,
Yeah.
tell us what it is you've blown up recently, Eric. I know we answered the question already, which is why it's a leading question.
Right. You want me to tell the story about the Shenzhen and Gibsonian?
Well, give us a short version. And then
Okay,
kind of
so,
expand to get excited.
Right. So I'm working on a project. It's my job to fix the internet. Well, yeah, really it is. I'm one of the senior engineers that helped build it way back when, 30 years ago, longer ago than I like to think about. And so, when it breaks, it's our internet, so we have to fix it. And we think there's a problem in the infrastructure, which we call buffer bloat, and it has to do with the queuing strategies and routers being wrong. I can actually explain this really quickly with an analogy. Suppose you have a pipe emptying into a cistern, and there's water steadily flowing into the cistern, and the cistern has a magic spell on it that says it only empties downstream when it's full. So water flows gently into the cistern, it fills up, and then empties in one huge blurp, and then it fills up, and it empties in one huge blurp, and it fills up, and it empties in one huge blurp.
Actually, there's a thing that works exactly like that on the Chaos Machine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be magic.
Or like a capacitor in an electrical circuit works exactly this way. See what happens. We have smooth flow going in one side, and we have bursty flow coming out the other. Now imagine that your pipe has a series of these magic cisterns in it, and at each stage, the smooth flow is getting burstier and burstier and more chaotic. And this is what we think is happening on the internet, and this is why you get dropouts in your videos and strange, chaotic fluctuations in your latency when you talk to servers, because there's these huge usage spikes being induced by excessively large packet buffers all through the internet. That's why we call it buffer bloat.
But Eric, I thought that the solution to any problem on the internet is to make things bigger.
Well, you'd think so, but in this case, your solution is one of two things. Either you make the buffers a lot smaller so they chaoticize the flow less, or, and this is what we think we're going to end up doing, we implement better queuing strategies so that the buffers have smarter rules for when they empty and they don't screw up TCPI's congestion notification thing. Anyway, this is just background. In order to get a handle on the problem, we want to build something we call the cosmic background buffer bloat detector.
That's exciting.
And yes, if you're a network geek, yes.
I'm not, but I'm excited.
We'll discuss that later. So the way this would work is we'd deploy about 100 instrumented routers all over the internet, and what they would be doing is taking accurate measurements of packet transit times so that we can basically monitor the network's health in real time and see if we really have a problem, and maybe it'll give us a handle on the mitigation strategy. But there's an issue with building this detector, which is that we can't count on network time protocol to give us accurate times. Why? Well, remember, crazy latency spikes. One of the things they're screwing up, it might be screwing up, is time service, which relies on packet transit times between nodes being statistically smooth in certain ways that I won't go into right now. But if they're not statistically smooth, suddenly time service doesn't work anymore. You don't know what time it is. So in order to make our detector work, we not only need a bunch of instrumented routers, but each router needs to have a time source attached to it with atomic clock precision, or at least millisecond or less, since NTP is 10 milliseconds accuracy, and we need an order of magnitude better than that. But now we run into a problem. Such hardware doesn't exist. I lie, it does exist, but it costs upwards of $3,000 each. It's called a GPS-constrained rubidium oscillator, and that's just as expensive as it sounds. So,
You live in the future.
it's a piece of laboratory-grade equipment that physicists use. Okay, so we can't afford those damn things. So now we're kind of screwed because conventional GPSs only give you 1 second accuracy, which isn't good enough to start with. And on top of that, they got 170 millisecond wobble, as it turns out, 170 millisecond jitter, which is larger than the feature size we want to measure, so forget that. So I'm sitting here scratching my head thinking about the problem, and I realized, wait, there is something that all GPSs emit that is precise enough. And that's called a 1 PPS pulse, 1 pulse per second. And every GPS chip emits this. It's GPS atomic clock time accurate to 50 nanoseconds. Yes, that's 50 millionths of a second. And all that most GPSs use it for is lighting up the stupid little LED that tells you the GPS is active. Which, as I said to Frank, is kind of like using an F-16 to deliver your milk.
Now, 50 billionths of a second, isn't it?
I maybe 50 millions, 50 billions. What's 3 orders? What's 3 orders of magnitude between friends? So I'm sitting here thinking, there's got to be some way we can use this PPS pulse. And in fact, there used to be a way, long ago in the dark and backward abysm of time, when we had these things called serial interfaces, RS-232 with the D-shaped connectors. Y'all remember that? Okay, it used to be that what you did was you took one of these GPSs and you wired the pulse pin to one of the handshake pins, which was actually there for modems. Don't ask me why. And
really precise slow modems.
And so the one PPS would come out on the handshake pin, and your computer would be watching it, and it would have 50 nanosecond precision time, and all would be well. There's just one problem with this. Serial interfaces are obsolete. Nobody uses them anymore. They're all dead. And the routers, all they have is USB. Well, so I'm sitting here thinking, how do I get that 50 nanosecond pulse, accuracy pulse, out of a USB GPS? And I went around looking for vendors, and it turns out I figured out that all they have to do is wire one pin on the GPS chip to one pin on the USB adapter, and they'll be golden. And somebody must be doing this. And Google is my friend, so I went looking. And I found a company in France called ZTI that makes these things, these little GPS goggles, and they say, you buy one of these, you'll get a 1 millisecond accuracy time source. And I say, ha, that's the USB polling interval. I know what they're doing. They just added that one trace that I reasoned out. And then I asked their North American distributor how much the things cost, and they said, we'll give you one for the low price of $900. Ow. Not working.
It beats the $3,000.
Yeah,
You
but
pushed it down.
I pushed it down
so much.
But this is still not practical for deployment. So I started thinking, can I get anyone to make these for me? Okay, so here's where we take a sharp right turn into William Gibson land. Because I go Googling for GPS manufacturers, thinking that if I want to modify GPS, it's kind of logical to talk to a GPS manufacturer. Okay, so the first thing I find out is that all the GPS manufacturers in the world are located in Shenzhen, China. Not a surprise, that's where all the electronics in the world is made these days. The second thing I find is that there's a site called Alibaba.com, which is a sort of master Chinese clearinghouse site where you can search for products and companies and place orders from anywhere in the world. And here's where it turns into Gibson land. There's a link that takes you to a live chat system where you can talk to their trade reps in real time. So here I am at 5:30 in the morning on March 15th of this year, and I'm chatting up Chinese trade reps for fab companies in real time, and I'm explaining what I want, and they're saying, oh yeah, that's a pretty standard custom manufacturing job. We can do that for you. Now, I want you to step back and think for a moment about how weird this is. I am not a corporation. I do not have a multi-million-dollar development budget. I don't have a lab and a bunch of people in lab coats. I'm just me, and I'm not even a hardware designer. I have just, in effect, turned these guys into my engineering group and become the lead on a hardware design product by sending a couple of emails.
Well, you did do live chat.
And the live chat. Okay, so these companies get the idea. Two of them nibble. I've had one set of engineering samples come in, which didn't work because of a technical problem with the USB adapter. One of my developers is expecting a set of samples to come to him on Monday, and we're pretty sure those are going to work because the manufacturer tested those in China with our software. They really do manufacturing on demand. And the upshot is that in 60 to 90 days, the world is going to have something that's never existed before, which is a millisecond precision time source that you can get for $30, and then we'll go build the cosmic background buffer blip detector and fix the internet.
When will the internet be fixed?
That'll take longer than actually coming up with a solution. Because it's the internet.
Yeah, because there's this thing called a deployment problem. You can come up with the most wizardly solution ever imagined by human beings, but the problem of actually getting it pushed out to actual deployment in actual wiring closets is actually really hard. It's often the hardest part of the job.
Now the good news on this is that this is basically a $30 cost to build dongle, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which means there are lots of other things you can do with this conceivably. Or not, well, you
Oh,
can do
yeah.
many of them.
So let me talk about some of the applications. Here's one. Stratum 1 time servers for MTP. You want high precision time service that you can feed to the rest of the net? $30. Navigational systems for unmanned aerial vehicles. They need millisecond time precision because they travel really fast. Now you've got a really lightweight, cheap way to do it. Use number 2. Use number 3. I just learned last night that there are high security sites like chemical plants and military bases that don't want to open up the port that talks to network time service because that's another port through which they can be attacked. They buy their own local time service sources for several $1,000s, see rubidium oscillator, etc. And it's much cheaper if they can go out and buy a $30 dongle that does the same thing. So that's 3 applications right there. And we're probably talking several $1 million in sales a year in a thriving little industry. And I said this to Frank, and he said, is that all? And I said, Frank, dude, how many industries do I have to blow up before you're going to be satisfied?
I thought he was working on something big and impressive, and once he come up with this little $30 USB thing.
He thought it was really cool, like the time I got death threats from the Iranian government for helping their dissidents build secure communication networks.
Well, you were the one getting the death threats, not me, so I thought it was cool.
No,
Yes, but when you try to sell that thing to the government, which is $30 now, when we finally get done giving it to the government, sell it to the government, you get the $3,000 price.
Well, keep in mind that the government, which is never, the government is always going to go through some kind of contracting ladder, basically the Amway of government.
Yeah.
So, okay,
which
so
means that it'll build up in price.
this is the answer to your question. That was my intro. This kind of thing is my life.
And why are you in Nify, by the way? That's the other question you were asking.
Because one of the other industries I blew up was I helped found the open source movement back in 1997, and because of that I was the science guest of honor at the original Penguicon along with Terry Pratchett. And just to make it all extra cool, Terry Pratchett and I are actually old friends, so we jammed together really well on stage, and that was a lot of fun.
So what did you do for the internet back in the day?
What did I do? Oh, The piece of the internet architecture that sort of metaphorically has my name on it is in 1983, as a very young, wet behind the ears internet programmer, I happened to walk into the IETF's final planning meeting when they were going to finalize the new domain name system. They were going to throw out all the old functional domains, gov, net, org, and so forth. And they were going to have a rigid geographical system where it was, I would be, for example, us.pa.malvern.foo or something. And remember, this was 1983. Not a lot of people were thinking about microcomputers yet. And I just happened to be the guy who walked into that final meeting when they were prepared to sign off on all the design papers and said, what happens when people move?
Oh, you and your picky. Everybody's a critic.
Consternation ensued, and about 90 minutes, and they said, okay, so you pointed out the problem, what should we do about it? And I said, and I'm freaking amazed they didn't kick me out of the room for putting it this way. I said, let 1,000 flowers bloom, okay? Keep the functional domains, have your geographic domain naming system, and let the customers figure out how they want to be designated. And after about 90 minutes of discussion, that's what they ended up doing. And that's why the whole domain the gold rush thing, the whole name pile on where everybody's competing for squatter space all the time, that's all my fault.
And now they opened up where if you have $180,000, you can buy your own dot, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, so you can have .idiot, .lunatic, which seem to be largely the purpose of those things.
I'm like so tempted to just buy .hack and give away stuff.
So then what's the point in you have a hard time getting there?
The triple X thing? Well, the problem, if you don't mind me, I'm not an expert, but
Yeah.
but as somebody that's not an expert is nobody cares.
Okay.
Everyone wants .com. That's what everybody wants. What do people default think of when they, it's a website, it's probably .com, I don't have to, like a phone number.
Yeah.
If you're in the area, you don't really need to remember the area code. It's kind of left off. Oh, what was that website? Happy Trails? Probably .com. Oh, it's not .com. Probably .net. And then it's like .org? And if it's something like .co, .info, .raw, who cares? I'm not going to remember that unless it's bookmarked somewhere. Everyone's going for it.
There are two things about that to keep in mind. First, that's not universally true around the world.
Well, no, but here.
Here, that's absolutely true. And in fact, even large companies around the world that are based outside the U.S. really do like .com for exactly the reasons you talked about. On the other hand, the people who are heavily invested in the process are not people like you and like me, for whom .com seems like the obvious thing. It is people who have money to make in this process. And who has money to make in the process of new kinds of domain names? It's the people who are the registrars. It's the people who sell domain names.
Are pushing this proliferation.
Yeah.
Now, some of the, like the .ly frickin' took off because it made everything cute.
And because they didn't mention the fact that LY stands for Libya and they're getting a piece of every one of those transactions.
Right.
They really are.
Yeah.
Yes, they really are.
So that's
Now, it's not, that doesn't mean that every time you go to Bitly,
You guys have just blown holes all over my brain. I don't even know what to think anymore about anything.
yes, but you were.
I feel like I learned too much.
chaos, anarchy, desolation. My work here is done.
I think I need a drink. You can't put any more holes in my brain than what you did.
We wanted there to be food and drink here. No one told us there wasn't going to be food and drink there.
Hysteria.
Normally when I get information overloads, it's like in terms I can't understand at all and I can just ignore it, but you actually said it in a way that I understand most of it.
But you see, this is a large part of my job. One of the reasons I've been able to blow up a couple industries is that I can explain these things in a way that 5-year-old children and corporate executives can understand.
I know a lot of smart
5-year-old
people
children
who don't value that talent enough. The ability to explain themselves to people.
Although you do take 3 years to make sure that you have something coherent that's going to go in the web.
Oh, like
No.
I said,
It's related to the same thing, as opposed to, yeah, I'll just do whatever comes into my head for the next page.
So what it is neurochemistry is destiny. The reason most geeks don't value that talent as much as they should is because they're introverts. I am that bizarrest and most rare of creatures, the extroverted geek.
Are there any questions? You sir, you came in late.
Are there any answers?
I'm just marking time until the next.
Wow, fine.
You thought there was going to be.
Oh, okay,
We got
so-
5 minutes left, I think.
Okay, so like we got way off on the original question, but it was good discussions.
There was a question.
So over to the music. So we didn't ask any music
yes,
questions.
you guys-
Right? So I would like to So there's this thing where we all like to be musicians. We'd all like to be able to do singing in front of crowds and all that stuff. And I think for most of us, it's the inhibitor is like you have to spend time to learn music and to learn all this. So how do you make it fun so that you can learn this every day, going and doing your practicing and all that effort?
We don't really have to make it fun. Music just is fun. That's one of the reasons why we're doing it.
But
At least in the rehearsing.
But there was a
Yeah.
time. There was a time. Scales aren't really fun. The technical stuff isn't really fun. You have to get to the, except for him. Well, apparently, he picked up a guitar for the first time in what, like 2 o'clock? No, in what, November?
November is
Yeah,
really
November
when I
last year.
started practicing
Regularly.
pretty regularly.
Yeah.
I've actually been noodling with the guitar for about 10, 12 years.
Okay, well that makes me feel better.
I didn't just pick it up and bam, I was.
And
No.
the more instruments you
He did
know
have some
already, the
previous
easier
Yes,
it is
that,
to
yeah.
learn new
Fraction,
things.
that's really annoying and tell them how I learn instruments.
I don't know how you learn an instrument, so I'd be interested.
So I turn on the radio, I pick up the instrument, and I start making sounds with it. When the sounds that I make with the instrument start matching the sounds on the radio, I'm getting somewhere. I don't do scales. What's the point?
Well, that's so that you can move your. The purpose of scales is to move your fingers fast enough.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
why
I-
that's why I practice improvising for the radio, because that exercises my fingers and it's not boring.
And it also exercises your ears as well,
Yeah.
which is a big part of it. I mean, you can learn music as theory, which is mostly what you do if you start playing in elementary school or middle school or whatever. You start learning the theory. This is an A, this is a B, this is how you read it on a music staff. But if you learn to play by ear, you have some more flexibility, and I think it's more fun because
Yeah,
you're getting
definitely.
something. Playing scales really is boring. I hate playing scales, but you actually get a piece of music you can play along with. Whatever your favorite music is, you put it on and you play along with it, and it's fun. And that's to me what keeps it exciting when we're rehearsing something new, and it can be a little bit painful because we know what we want it to sound like, but it's not quite there
Not
yet.
working yet, yeah.
But you get little bits and pieces. You start with something and you kind of work with it, and you're like, hey, that actually sounds really cool right now.
Yeah.
And then you build on that, and that keeps the excitement going even through the process of putting the music together. That you have these sort of little epiphanies as you go along.
And little moments of
milestones.
synergy where things just kind of shift slightly and click.
Yes.
And then you keep moving forward and going along.
Like last week, for instance, when we were rehearsing, we put together. I had a piece that I'd written years ago and had done with a different group, and we pulled it out. And we've been rehearsing it a little bit, and we've been doing it exactly the same way that I'd done with the previous group. And it was going all right, but it was just kind of like, that's all right. And then Sean started playing a completely different rhythm on it, and I mean, we changed time signatures, completely different rhythm, different characteristic to the music.
I didn't
And I
even
started-
intend to.
Yeah, and I
Was messing with his guitar and started doing the
Sequence,
chords.
and you were like,
I'm like, hey, I'm gonna play along with that. And even though we're switching time signatures, it sounds really cool. And that just brought it brought new life into that particular piece of music to do something different with it. And we all just after we finished that, we were like, yeah, I think I like it this way.
Yeah.
It's a really cool change to this piece of music.
I think almost the point of this whole, really a theme with all of us is that we're all doing things that are really kind of hard and time consuming, and but we
it's
all
creative
love
work.
we all love to do it. So we don't mind
Yeah.
any of the really hard
Like,
work.
I totally begrudge all of the time that I give to my day job, because that's time that I could be spent, or that I could be using to be productive.
Yeah.
I call it.
Yeah.
Guess what that pays the rent?
Yeah. Get rented.
Yeah. Sadly, earlier today, I didn't ask me anything in the panel, and a bright-eyed kid asked me, so how can you do what's creatively satisfying and pay the bills at the same time? And I'm afraid I had to say inherit wealth.
Actually, I may be the one person on this panel who is doing something that's creatively satisfying and getting paid steadily by a major corporation to do it. And that's, I used to be a columnist. I used to be 2 columnists, actually, for Computer World, which is a weekly trade publication for people who work in large IT.
Just call them Big Five People.
But, well, no, I wrote a column under my own name every week, and I also did the work for editing together what is a feature called Shark Tank. It's also a daily feature on the web, and stories come in from readers, and I clean them up and file the serial numbers off so that the people are not nearly as, they figure, okay, I've taken all the parts out, and I look at that thing and I think, in 5 minutes with Google, I could figure out what the company is, what the job position is, all of this. So I file that stuff off, but make sure the technical details are as tight as possible. And for the last 9, I do other stuff as well. And so I do the daily, 5 days a week. Those things go up on the Computer World website, and it used to be that there were another 3 or 4 stories that would appear separately in the print edition, but now it's just kind of a digest of several stories that have already appeared on the web. For that, I'm not going to say how much, but I get enough that it pays the mortgage and the health insurance, which is really necessary because the stuff that was kind of the real consulting type outside work money thing dried up 9 months ago. So I'm actually making my living off of a large corporation doing something that is creatively satisfying, which is really nice. And I wish all of you who are in the position of doing things that are creatively satisfying that aren't, you're not making a living for it. I wish all of you
I have at
could be
some
able to.
points done that.
Yeah, no, I want all of you to have it like clockwork. Even if it means there's something on this, the thing that's doing it on the side is something that you invoice a large corporation for. You can figure out how to do that. That's a little solider than the craziness that is music and the craziness that is webcomics.
I guess my equivalent of that is writing books and collecting royalties, because I don't write a book until I really want to. But if you're going to do this, I advise you to write computer books, because it turns out that's the only kind of book you can sell that makes enough royalties that, according to my friends in the publishing industry, is the only kind of book you can sell that makes enough royalties that you don't have to have a day job. I mean, and I thought the royalties were crap until I found out what my friends who write fiction got paid.
Yes.
And I'm going, what?
Really popular fiction.
John Scalzi works at a gas station on the weekends.
Yeah, it's
There's
crazy.
an awful lot of people who are Hugo winners, who are people who have, multi-book contracts are working their way through, who are big names and get really up and coming, and they sweat out the mortgage every single month.
Yeah.
If they have a mortgage.
What was that Mercedes Lackey was working, she was taking reservations for airline for a while.
No. She was a programmer who worked on the reservation system.
Oh, whatever.
There was a difference in that, because
Whatever.
taking reservations is not quite as skilled as. But yeah, no, that was what she was doing when she started out. But for years after that, it was still touch and go. After she went full time with the writing, it gets tough, and she was doing what she loved though. So that does make a huge difference. And I believe
All right,
that
I
brings us up to the end of our time.
So thanks for checking us out.